Episode number 85. This episode is brought to you by my group coaching program, the Career Clarity Academy. If you've been feeling stuck in your career, unsure about what the next step is, confused about how you could possibly make any type of transition, then the Career Clarity Academy is really going to help, because it will provide you with a proven framework for getting crystal clear clarity on what's the right next step for you in your career, and then give you the tools and the strategy that you need in order for you to leverage what you already know and the experience you've already gained, so that you can transition without necessarily having to retrain. Hi, you're listening to the Careers Beyond Motherhood podcast with your host, Janine Esbrand. I'm here to help working mums like you to thrive in your careers and in motherhood. I share tips, strategies, and inspirational conversations with awesome women to help reduce the struggle in your juggle.
Time for say, Mummy.
Hello, and welcome to the show. It is great to have you listening in today as we dive into the topic of entrepreneurship, and we're going to be talking about starting a business and what it's like to start a business, because I know that many people I speak to consider starting a business as a potential option when they are at a career crossroads. But if you haven't run a business before, it's really difficult to know what that looks like. And whilst it might give you some increased autonomy and flexibility, that doesn't necessarily mean it's an easier option. So I really wanted to have someone on and talk about what it looks like. So I have an amazing guest on today called Liana Fricker. She is the founder of a brilliant community called the Inspiration Space. So we are diving in and having a very candid conversation about what it's like to juggle running a business and raising a family and all of the things that go into the entrepreneurial journey. So she's got so many good insights to share with us today. So I cannot wait for you to hear. I know you're going to love her. She's absolutely fantastic. Great energy. So without further ado, let's jump right into my interview with Liana. Hi, Liana. I am so excited to have you on the show today. Could you start by introducing yourself and telling everybody a little bit about you?
Well, my name is Liana Fricker, and I am the founder of a community called the Inspiration Space. And prior to starting this community, which the whole point of it is to help people reach their full potential and make it easier to start, grow, and scale a business, I worked in marketing. And I did that for 15 years. When I first moved, and I started when I first moved to the UK from California. Now that's quite a story, because I moved over here in the early 2000s, and I was supposed to stay for 6 months and go back. And when I went back, I was going to go and be a talent agent. And instead of that, I met a dude, got a job working as an intern in fashion PR, and decided that the job was awesome and the guy was awesome. And so I stayed. And I worked in different areas of PR for the first probably 3 years of my career. And then I landed the best opportunity ever, which was a role in an integrated agency, which in marketing speak is it's an agency that they do a little bit of everything. And so it's not isolated into PR or advertising or experiential. An integrated agency might do, a little bit of all of it. And I reported directly into this really awesome client who was global marketing director for Bacardi. And I kind of created my own job, and it was a really entrepreneurial space. Full of all these creatives, and they basically were like, we don't care what you do, just do what you need to do. And that was my first taste of what entrepreneurship was like. And so I did that for 4 years, and I got really burnt out. I was traveling the world. It was there was a lot of demands on it, even though there was a lot of freedom. it was very demanding, partly because I hold myself to a really high standard, and also because I was working with people that were literally at the top of their game and at the top of the hierarchical tree that they were at. So there was a lot riding on what I was doing. And so I gave it my all and completely burnt out. I had no idea what I was going to do next. Because at the time it was right after the crash. So everybody that I knew was losing their jobs, especially my friends in the States. I mean, it was whole advertising agencies were shutting down, departments being just cut. And so it was one of those things at the time, whereas if you had a job, you weren't going anywhere because you knew that it was going to be a case of last in, first out, and everything was getting cut. So I was at an age, I was like, kind of want to have kids. I literally have no idea what I'm going to do next. I was feeling very, very jaded with the creative industries and what I was doing. And so I said, I'm going to move to Surrey and have a baby. Obviously with my husband, the dude that I stayed in the UK for. So that's what we did. And I took 18 months out. It was almost exactly 18 months because when my son turned 18 months, I went back to California to visit. I'd been going back and forth while he was a newborn because I could. And in that time, my sister started dating a guy who had a startup. And I'm from Northern California, and it was very much that Silicon Valley, I'm fundraising, I'm doing this, I've got my seed, my Series A, what have you done? I'm like, I picked up fish fingers off the floor. Like, I'm living my best life. And so that experience completely and totally opened my eyes to entrepreneurship. And the significance of the fact that my son was 18 months old was that he was at that point where he didn't need me in the same way he did when he was a baby. He was in nursery, a couple of days a week, and I had all this time on my hands. So I said to my brother, my now brother-in-law, you've got this startup. I've actually launched lots of digital products. I've done stuff with communities, this, that, and the other. I would love to work with you. The same time, a friend of mine had just started a blog. She was in LA, and it was when it was at the point where you could start to commercialize blogs. And because I'd done with my role in Bacardi a lot of community management and branded partnerships and I was like, oh my God, I love what you're doing. I can do that for you too. So that was the start of my entrepreneurial career. Because it was in California, I was able to work in the evenings because 8 p.m. in the UK is 10 a.m. over there. My husband was commuting into the city because he was on partnership track as a lawyer, so I was really lonely. So I kind of had the best of both worlds, and everything that I'm doing now really started from there.
I love that. And so you had another baby though after your 18-month-old. And so how did things shift after having your second son?
So it was funny because my friend that I was working with, who had the blog, she was about 2 years ahead of me with the baby thing. And I remember she had said to me, when I was pregnant with my second, she was like, just watch. She was like, it's all going to change. You're not going to want to stop working. And I brushed it off, not because I thought she was wrong, but because I knew she was right. Mm-hmm. And there was something quite comical about it, because I don't know about your experience, but when I had my first, I was like, oh my God, babies sleep so much more than I thought that they did. I could actually be doing stuff right now. I could be working. And so when I had the second, I remembered what she had said, and I built that into it. So I was working with her. At that point, I had started consulting for my brother-in-law's foundation, which is called the Hidden Genius Project. And their mission is to take young Black men in the Bay Area, so in Oakland, and teach them entrepreneurial skills, coding, and help them to, become, part of the fourth industrial revolution. That's something that I've really always been really passionate about. And so I worked with them. and her, and I had the second one, and it was like this little baby, and I was like, oh my gosh, Jessie was right. Like, if anything, I want to do this more, because it felt like this ticking clock, because every day as they get older, you're like, you're going to be moving, like all the things that are making it easy to consult right now are actually going to go away. So I felt almost a time pressure. A time pressure, like, get it in while all you got to do is stick a boob in his mouth.
Yes.
There's gonna come a point when, like, that's not your option any longer.
Like, I totally relate. I remember when my daughter was small, and I would be doing like live streams and like breastfeeding her under the camera view. Just like, I'm gonna do this now because soon she's gonna be crawling, and I won't be able to do a live stream because she'll be out the door, and I'll have to get off.
100%. 100%. It's so different, and I think the beauty of motherhood is the first time is the first time. And I think, and that was why I felt so comfortable in my decision to almost burn it all down with my career the first time, because I was like, this is, you know what this is. You know what working is like. You know what being in an agency is like. But the first time you're pregnant there's only one first time to do that. I've got zero frame of reference. And I kept saying to myself, you know, other than being born and dying, this is the only thing that you've got no frame of reference for, that you'll never be able to do again. Seriously, though.
Wow, that is so true. I've never thought of that.
I was like, this is the only thing where I've got nothing. I have no idea what's happening, from the first twinges that you feel, from, you know, all of it. This is the first time that it will be the first time. And I really, really embraced that. And I think I got a lot of power from that. And so I think it was easier for me to turn off everything and just be like, if this is all it is, that's cool. And the fact that it all naturally turned back on again was amazing. And so when I had my second, I was really starting to hit my stride of this second act of my career. And knowing that there is a time pressure, because once he started wiggling and moving, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't do the things that I was able to do just 6 months ago because he's climbing on stuff. Like, this is insane.
When you said about, you know, it's the first time, that would be the first time, I remember feeling like, if I can birth a human, I can do anything. Of course I could start a business. Before I had a son, I would be like, what are you talking about? You don't know how to do that. But then I was like, well, I didn't know how to build a baby, but I did that. And I didn't know how to birth one, and I did that. So I don't know how to build a business, so I can do that. There was such an element of, I can actually do whatever. And so oftentimes I think people do go through motherhood, and then they assess their career. Lots of women that I work with, they're like, I don't want to do what I was doing before. I don't really know what I want to do next, but I know I want to do something different. So that whole, who knew that I could go from not being pregnant to actually being pregnant and then a baby comes, opens up your eyes to the possibility. Transition.
100%. And I think for me, one of the best things my mom ever said to me, and it was in my early 20s, she was like, this is not about figuring out what you do want to do. It's about knowing what you don't want to do, and then you pick what's left. And so I think because I had that in the back of my head, when I decided that I was going to bounce out of my career and just be like, honest to God, I am signing up for this under the expectation that I literally might well be a Surrey housewife. Like, I'm not looking at any alternative, because all I know is I'm not doing that anymore.
Right.
And I'm not going to another place to do this under someone else's brand. Like, I'm not doing it anymore because the whole thing sucks. I'm not doing it. And because I knew that, I jumped into it. I don't know, I guess I almost like rediscovered my youth. It was like anything is possible, in the same way that it felt when I was, 18 years old.
Amazing. So talk to me now about kind of the transition into the inspiration space, because it's like you were doing all the stuff for your brother-in-law and your friend, and then I know you did like various other things, and then you got to the place where you started this amazing community, and it's grown like exponentially in the last 2 years.
I think, again, it goes back to my career history. when the part of the reason why I was super jaded was that I could see the impact that I was making. I was like, I am changing people's minds. I am selling products, but I don't believe in the stuff that I'm selling. And when I was really lucky that right before I left, I worked on a project with Greater London Authority and the NHS, and it was the first time that I was able to use my power for good. And it did good. We saw the results. I was like, this is amazing. So I had the break. I was going to Silicon Valley. I was seeing all these people who were just like, oh my gosh, anything is possible. And I was like, yes, anything is possible. And then I came home and I was still doing the thing where I was being a mom, quote unquote, during the day. And I was working at night. And during the day, I was going to play groups and I was having conversations with all these women. And if they had speech bubbles above their head, it would have said, ex-hedge fund manager, GP, lawyer. And they're all running around like me, cleaning up snot and stopping their kids from like beating another one with a tambourine. And like, you can't have a full conversation. And I was okay with that because I had this alternative life, right? At night where I was working and I felt this sense of purpose and I was using my brain and having adult conversations and all the things that I'd been working for and towards up until the point that I had kids, I was still able to kind of tap back into it. And not only that, but on my own terms, right? I was no longer compromising, doing stuff for people that I didn't want to do. And I was like, the difference between me and them is opportunity. That's it. That's it. And I was like, I guess I'm one of those people, I've always had this contrarian belief that anybody can reach their full potential. All they need is opportunity and the right mindset. And being the controlling, bossy person that I am, I was like, I will force them. I will force them. Like, it will be sugar on a spoon, but I will force them. And so that's where the inspiration space came from. I just took all the tools that I had in my toolkit. It was no longer about the fact that, my title with work was this or that. It was like, I've got all these skills, all these experiences, and this stubborn belief that if you just inspire people and give them options and opportunities, they will do what they need to do to be amazing. And the inspiration space really just came from that. I'm a stubborn person.
One of the things that I love as well is that with the way that your business is set up, I feel like from the outside looking in that you really leverage what you're naturally good at. So I'm always one of those people who says, you need to play to your strengths. If you don't know what your strengths are, figure that out and then play to that. Because if you're playing to your strengths, the work that you do, you're going to enjoy it. You're going to love it. And you're like naturally a networker, a connect, someone who knows everybody. So in your business model, you're able to use that like crazy to help other people.
100%. And I think, again, it just goes back to this, what don't I want to do? You've got, everybody has a toolkit. You have all these skills that you've literally been developing since day dot. And school tells you to use these ones. Like everybody's trying to, society, right, manipulates them and tells you what you should focus on at the expense of other things. But some of them, especially in today's economy, are more valuable than others. As a child who was always, separated from her classmates for jib-jabbing too much, turns out that's like, a golden ticket these days, right? Like, who knew? My ability to just come up with really crazy creative ideas and connect the dots, it's something that I can monetize. But it's not because that's the only skill that I've got. I had to make a decision to just focus on the vital few, and that's what I did. And with the inspiration space, it's come very, very organically. And I think a lot of it is because I'm stubborn. I am really, really stubborn. I have an opinion. I've got lots of opinions, not a opinion, about the way the world can and should work. It is very utopian, but I think now that I'm 2 years in, I see that it works. I'm seeing the proof of this idea that if you give people the tools and the inspiration and you don't beat them with it, but you literally create a whole ecosystem where they can't help but touch it. And it's reinforced over and over and over again. You get that result.
So I want to talk to you a little bit about challenges, because now your children are in a whole different phase to what we were talking about before in terms of being at school, and they're no longer babies. And now you're running this business, which is amazing, but obviously takes up a lot of time. So what are some of the challenges that you face just being a working mom and just doing the thing that you love to do, but then also raising a family?
I find the hardest thing is the switchover, right? So my youngest is now 5. And last year was really, really challenging because the kids go to school about 45 minutes away from where we live because of traffic mostly. And the oldest was an elite gymnast, and he was training an insane amount of hours, and he couldn't be late, and it was very serious. And so I was having to go from home to drop them off at school to then fit in work, knowing I had to have 45 minutes to get from home to school, have all the snacks, because one kid's about to do like 4 hours of training and just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And so never being able to switch off from work to home was a really, really big challenge, because I do really love what I do. And what I do, I mean, everyone's job I would like to think is cerebral, but I guess maybe the way that I work means that I get wrapped up in my own head a lot, because the ideas don't just necessarily come. It takes a lot of toiling away at it in my own head over and over and over again until I get my aha. And so the fact that I would be in that process of toiling and be like, oh my God, it's 2:30. I haven't made apple slices. And like, I got to get this, that, and the other. And you're picking the kids up and you're talking to the parents. And all of a sudden I'm still in my head, but I'm physically now in this different environment where the expectation is for me to come out of my head. The kids are talking this, that, and the other. And I found it really, really overwhelming. This year, the oldest is now both kids basically have a longer school day. The eldest has quit gymnastics. And so I've got more space to transition from my working day to my mom day. And so I find that a little bit easier. But then you get the school holidays. And the school holidays is such a kick up the butt, because in the UK, they're like, I don't know, every 6 weeks. I mean, they just went back after Christmas.
They just went back.
They're off this week. And then I think yesterday, all of a sudden I was like, in a month, they're off for a month.
Yes, I know. I'm like, these kids are out of school more than it feels like they're in school. And like, why are the holidays so long? Like, why are they so long? I just don't understand.
They aren't tired yet, because I'm not tired. Like, I'm not tired, so they're not tired. That is one of the things that I find really, really difficult. So this week I've been juggling it, because it's only a week. And I've been juggling in the sense that I've done calls and this, that, and the other. And I think that's, again, one of the big challenges that I find as a working parent are the modern expectations, right? Because when I was a kid, when we had school holidays, I went to my grandparents' house, because that was literally our babysitter. Like, that was our babysitter. All my cousins, like, we were all at my grandparents' house. And they were downstairs watching soap operas, and we were just like, right, doing our thing. There was no, or what are we doing today? Like, there was no, what are we doing today? At all. Like, that just, and so I find that to be this a real struggle, because there is this modern expectation that I'm supposed to be like all in all the time with the kids and having all these activities planned, because you work for yourself. Surely, that's the beauty of working for yourself, so that you can be there for the kids all the time. And I'm like, that's not necessary. It's the flexibility, yes, but being entertainment director and CEO, not so much. That's not what I signed up for. And so I find the school holidays are really, really tricky. And it was funny today, I had to go on like a 2-hour training for this new CRM system that one of the clients that I work with, because I do a lot of public sector consultancy for their enterprise programs. I went on the CRM and the kids are coming up and down. And I said to them, the little one asked me to get his pocket knife out. And I was like, no, you're not getting your pocket knife out. I'm literally on a call. And I've stopped doing that thing where I pretend I'm not at home with my kids. Like, I'm like, I don't mute it. I don't apologize. I actually think it's quite hilarious. So I'm like, the walkie-talkies are going off and this is like shenanigans. I'm literally upstairs. I'm like, no, you're not getting your pocket knives out. Come down, and they're both like real proud. Like, look what we made with our pocket knives. And they're like, what? I told you not to get the pocket knives out. I was like, okay, we have now identified a window of opportunity because I am uber tired. I'm on the board of trustees at an organization. I had this really late meeting. I stayed up until 2 a.m. the night before that. I was exhausted. I was like, punishment. So my number one parenting hack is this. If you are working from home during the school holidays and your kids put a foot out of line, the best punishment is to send them to their rooms for an indefinite amount of time. If you've got more than one kid, separate them. Because they literally had to stay in their rooms for like 3 hours. And I finished all my work and watched 3 episodes of Love is Blind on Netflix with zero guilt. Zero guilt. I was like, punishment, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. But it is hard. And it's hard for them as well because, yes, they do get bored and this, that, and the other. But again, I go back to thinking about when I was a kid, there was no expectation that someone was going to entertain me like that. And so I try to bring that into my own parenting. I think to myself, it's great for them. And it actually was because the oldest came up with a new math game using cards. The youngest, I mean, he's developed his hand-eye coordination by cutting the eyes out of a pair of socks and making a sock puppet, which is a whole other issue, but whatever. And so, you learn to roll with it. But it is really hard, juggling modern expectations of what being a mother should be and what you want,
So yeah, it's crazy. I totally identify because sometimes you just want to get your work done. And yeah, I love spending time with you, but like not all of the time. And so I'm glad that you raised that because I think that we do often paint the picture, right? That you're a working mom and you've got the flexibility. So you use that flexibility so you can spend all the time with your children. But sometimes you do want to do your work.
And I spent probably the first year of, having the inspiration space feeling like that juggle was empowering, giving myself these mental high fives like, oh my God, you did this and that and that and that. Now you're making dinner from scratch and you've done homework and da-da-da-da. And now I'm like, no, that's not the life that I want to have because that's not the expectation that I want to set. That's not normal. It's not normal. And oftentimes, if you're a woman and you've have the tenacity and the passion to start your own business, you are probably going to be a more elevated person in the sense that your capacity is greater. But the problem is people's expectations of you become higher. So then it makes it harder to stumble. It makes it harder to ask for help because you make it look so easy to juggle a million things. And then someone throws on 1,000,001 and you're in a heap on the floor. And I was like, I'm tired of feeling like that. I need more space to just have space. I don't want to block in every single moment of my day with something. Because as a business develops, you need more time to just think. The early days of a startup are in a lot of ways deceiving. It's almost like the early days of having a kid, right? If you get one of the ones that sleep and stuff, like I was really lucky. I got an easy one.
I didn't get that.
But I was like, oh my God, this is so easy. Like, it's so easy. But then, the business starts to grow. It has different demands that aren't as, linear. It's like when in the same way with parenting, it stops becoming as simple as burping, changing nappies, and feeding. There's a different need. And so that requires more time. It requires more headspace. You need to be alone almost to figure it out. And that's where my business is. And so I got to a point where I was like, I can't keep throwing everything at it because I'm just going to let everyone down. So one of the things that I do now, which I think is really, really helpful, is I block out my year. So I basically work a January to June year. And it seems incredibly short. But by that, I mean, I focus most of my execution and development between January and June. And then I take July and August off from delivery. I then spend July and August forward planning for September, October, November, December, so that by the time that part of the year comes in, I'm just like on cruise control. And then in like October, November, I start thinking and forward planning for January. So then what that means is I've taken all the pressure off of myself, because September becomes one of those times of year, especially after summer, everyone's like, go, 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 it's a new year. And so I've taken the opposite approach where I use September, October, November, December to start planning and getting everything in place for January, February, March. And by the time I get to June and July, I know what I'm doing in September, October, November, and I basically put it all in and I plug and play and I walk away.
That is amazing.
Yeah. And that has really, really, really helped so much. Really helps. And I think the other thing, as an entrepreneur, I focus on the vital few. And I think this is really, really important. So in the early days, it was about collaborating with everyone, doing everything. That's not sustainable. And so, especially as one person who's kind of quite early on made a decision that I don't want to have a big team of people. I don't want to have an organization of 50. I really am an entrepreneur. I'm not a CEO or business manager in that way. I like building. That's what I love. I want to manage a lot of people. And so with that, I was like, okay, you've got to find a way to deliver impact without, having 50 relationships on the go. So I focus on the vital few. The way that I market, the way that I partner, everything is the vital few. I look at things in bigger batches, and I work with people that in one interaction can deliver me a return of 50, as opposed to trying to speak to 50 people to deliver me a return of 1.
Yeah.
And again, that has made a huge difference, because now I'm able, as one individual working a January to June year, deliver, to literally 150 businesses. I deliver to 150 businesses, but I'm one person with an assistant and a social media manager.
Yeah, that is amazing. So it's so good to hear the kind of the growth in not only the business, but then your mindset around like what needs to be done, what you want to do, and how you want to do it. So if there's someone who's listened to this who's kind of like, I really would like to start a business, but I don't really know or understand all that's entailed, like what would be your top tips for them, like just getting started out of the gate, given the fact that you're 2 years into this particular business? What would you say to them?
Oh, so this might be controversial, but not everyone should start a business. Not everyone should start a business. And that's because to be an entrepreneur, to create something from scratch, you do have to have it's a contrarian belief. You've got to believe so much that something is a problem that you can't help but get off your ass and solve it. Money aside, it's like, I can't help but find a solution for this because it's keeping me up at night, almost with like irritation and frustration. And if I don't build this solution, I will lose my mind. If you feel like that, start a business. And if that's what you feel, I do a lot of research. I do so much research, and I don't think that you can research enough. I would really dig in on the industry that you're trying to work in. What are all of the problems that you see, the problems that other people see? What are all the solutions that people are trying to provide? What are the problems with their solutions? Like, you've got to pick everything apart, literally pick it all apart. And then from there, I would say start by building a community. Because if you can build a community of people that also believe in your contrarian belief that something is this messed up, then you got something, because effectively that's your first customers. If you are actually feeling job dissatisfaction, lack of purpose, don't really know which direction you want to go in, but you don't have that fire in your belly about a problem, get a career coach.
Hey, hello.
Honestly.
Come and speak to me, guys.
honestly, I think for me, when I landed where I am on accident, and that was because coaching wasn't anything that I knew about. I mean, this was almost 10 years ago. Coaching, it was over 10 years ago. Coaching wasn't a thing. So I didn't know that there was an alternative to switching companies or having a baby, right? Like, for me, I think because my choices just felt so binary.
Yeah.
And even then, I guess there was a third option, which was a sabbatical. But I always say to that one, I'm like, I think if I went home and I told my husband I don't want to go to work anymore, but I don't know what I want to do, he would have been like, yeah, join the club. like dust your Oyster card off and get back out there, champ. So like, that one didn't even pop into my mind as anything more than a fleeting thought. And so at the time, it was, do what you're doing somewhere else or have a baby. If I would have known about coaching, that probably would have been my first step, because at that time I didn't have any real burning desire to start a business. I just knew what I didn't want to do. It was only from being kind of away did that passion, start up. But I would say if you don't have this burning desire to fix a problem, get a career coach.
I think that's such good advice, because I think people can often be like, right, you need to start with doing this, the strategy. First and foremost, is this really for you? Because it's not, like you said, it's not for everyone. It's not easy.
It's not easy, and you've got to be, and I think it's not easy because there isn't an immediate payday, and I think starting a business is, again, very different from being a consultant or being freelance. I would call those extensions of employment. Yes, it's more flexible, and you get to decide, yeah, you've got more choice, but it's very different to starting a business or being an entrepreneur. And that's not for everyone, because the reality is, at the end of the road, if you're an entrepreneur, you start a business, you will probably not make any money. Not in the same way that you could if you were freelance or a consultant. So the thing that drives a business owner or an entrepreneur is if there is a problem out there, and I'm so confident that this problem exists for enough people that if I work out what the product is, if I work out the business model, if I work out the stakeholders, if I work out the route to market, there will be a payday at the end of it. But everything up until that payday is an investment of your time and your passion and your belief. And it is hard, because especially if you're doing something that other people aren't doing yet. Like when I started the inspiration space, there weren't a lot of people doing what it was that I was trying to do. Now that market has become really noisy and really crowded, and I find that to be one of the biggest challenges, because it is so easy for me to get distracted. And I think I lost in my business 9 months of just being distracted, losing focus on what it was that I was trying to do, losing touch with that like contrarian belief of the problem, and letting the financial pressures get to me. So then making choices that made sense commercially, but that didn't fit with what I was actually, with the problem that I was trying to solve, and they didn't work. because there has to be a point where the two things marry up. But that's the life of an entrepreneur. That's what that's all about. And if that struggle, because it is a struggle, if that's not something that appeals to you, and if what you were really trying to do is get more flexibility, more choice, without without sacrificing the paycheck, get a career coach.
Love it. That's such good practical advice.
Yeah, it's hard, and it is like this third baby that I've got. I think about it all the time. I love it and I hate it. Some days I'm like, I'm gonna send it to boarding school. Like.
So I like to ask all of my guests whether they have either a saying or a quote or something that resonates with them or that they like to share with other people. Do you have a saying?
Ooh, do I have a saying? I don't know. Oh, you got me on the spot now. I'm thinking. I don't have a saying. I don't have one, because there is no one size fits all. I guess my approach to life and what I say to myself is piss or get off the pot. Like, it's all well and good thinking about all the things that you're going to do, but what does that mean if you don't do it? And the thing that genuinely started my entrepreneurial journey was I started a community called Come Along Too. And again, that was at this point when I was doing consulting, and I was around all of these women who had all this experience and all of these skills, and they were very intelligent. And I was like, the biggest problem that everyone has is that, kind of the kids get in the way. And there was a parenting club that had come along, and I was like, I see what they're doing, but there's actually another way you can spin this. And so I called it Come Along Too. It's a club for you, but the kids can come too. So it's basically a mother-centered club, and we would host events and experiences, and it was all about, basically ensuring that the kids were taken care of, but that the moms were the focus point. And when I came up with the idea, it was maybe the fourth business idea that I had. And it was in that moment I was like, look, buy the URL. I was like, this is just going to be another pie in the sky idea unless you buy the URL. You got to buy the URL and you got to tell someone that you're doing it. And that's what I did. I bought the URL, comealong2.com, and I told people I was doing it. And that started it. And that is literally that piss or get off the pot. You can have this idea, you can feel the frustration and the passion, but unless you buy the URL or do something proactive, like, shut up. Like,
I love that. You've got to do.
Literally, do it. Just do it. And that's what I was going to say. I was like, oh my God, that's so trite.
Just do it. Oh, it's been so good chatting to you. I can literally chat to you all night. So if people want to find out more about you or the Inspiration Space, where is the best place for them to find you?
So the Inspiration Space, if you follow us on Instagram, which is theinspirationspace.co, all one word. You can also find me on LinkedIn under Liana Wilson-Fricker, or theinspirationspace.co with a www dot in front of it if you are located in the UK and you fancy yourself a spot of community and a little bit of fire in your belly.
Awesome. So I'm going to put all the links to your website, social media handles in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us.
Don't you just love Liana's energy? It was great to interview her and just hear her really honest take on what it looks like behind the scenes. I think there's not enough transparency amongst entrepreneurs or people who have got going with starting a business. So when you're thinking about getting into it, you might see the outside and feel like things are one way, but actually knowing what it is really like can be more helpful for someone who's considering that as an option. So I hope you found that as inspiring and useful as I did. I think that when we are considering our options, it's always good to have some solid data to work from. And like Liana said, it might be that you need to consider working with a coach who can help you to really identify whether starting a business is right for you or whether there's an alternative career path that you can take. And of course, if you'd be interested in learning more about how you can work with me, then head over to lightboxcoaching.com/academy and put your name down to get notified of details of my group coaching program, where I help people to find clarity around the best next step for them. I'll be putting the links to Liana's website and her social media handles in the show notes. So head over to lightboxcoaching.com/episode 85 if you want to access those notes and connect with her. I would love to connect with you as well. So if you are on LinkedIn or Instagram, then come and connect with me and let me know what some of your key insights were from this episode, or just chat generally. So I'm Janine Esbrand on LinkedIn, and we are at Careers Beyond Motherhood on Instagram. So I look forward to hearing from you. Subscribe to the show so you know that when the next episodes go live, and I will be back with you next time. Until then, look after you and look after your little ones. This podcast features music from Ben Sound.